Prevention being always better than cure is a fundamental idea of PAN organization. It is a highly spirited team working towards an approach to build a network globally and nationally to improve the nutrition system with the power of right dietary choices and to prevent diseases. A change is always contradicted. Hence, the PAN team works rigorously to appeal to the society through evidence-based guidance. To reach out nationally and spread this positive movement, PAN India was established in September 2022, with the chronic cardiovascular diseases, diabetes reaching new heights. PAN India has an aspirational approach. We organize polls, quizzes, feedback forms, query answer sessions, and journal clubs to disseminate this information to a wider group, especially through the means of social media platforms, namely WhatsApp, Instagram, and LinkedIn. It's an honor to introduce the core team to everybody. Our Executive Director, Dr. Sanjana Sikri, our Medical Director, Dr. Rajina Shaheen, our Advisor, Dr. Ashish Shabarwal, our Program Manager, Shruti Sarma. Along with these, we have really spirited volunteers, interns, and ambassadors, all with the goal of improving the broken nutrition plate. The team is showing a positive growth, so anyone interested in the same goal towards improving the knowledge on dietary choices, we welcome you to join a part of this movement. With a small introduction, I request Dr. Pritham to continue with the introduction of today's journal club paper.
Thank you, Sulaiman. I welcome all you to this second journal club. So this is what the flow of presentation was. The PAN introduction was by Mr. Sulaiman. And I just want actually introduce the two more volunteers that have come up to this journal club actually. That was Mr. Sulaiman and Dr. Nitesh. So Dr. Nitesh can introduce himself with when it comes to his part. Yes? Okay. Yes. So coming to the introduction. So every time the PAN association, the PAN organization, so it's giving a clarion call to unlock the power of a healthy and a sustainable diet. The eating patterns that are based on the plant-based foods. It has come up with number of webinars, the series which are backed by the evidences. So even the present topic is also gives a fascinating communication or the connection that we have the food between the food which we consume and also the blood lipid levels, right? So this is the so coming to the epidemiology of the non-communicable diseases, where this is the article which has published by the British Dietetic Association in the year 2021. In the Journal of Human Nutrition and Dietetics. So it mainly focuses on the importance of the inverse relationship between the dietary risk factors and the non-communicable diseases from the year 1990 to 2019. So actually in the recent decades, we all know that there are number of deaths and the year of healthy life lost. It's mainly due to the suboptimal diets that has been significantly increasing. So that means we are losing our healthy life that has been lost because of these non-communicable diseases, which are attributable to these dietary risk factors. So which we usually term it as an DALIS, that is disability adjusted life years, right? So in the right part of the slide, we can just look into that the graph, which shows the global death number of non-communicable diseases attribute to the dietary risk. So we can just look into the blue dotted lines, where in generally specifically it shows that the globally around 42 million deaths were attributed only to this the non-communicable diseases, in which actually about 7.9 million were the last line of the blue line. We can see that, yes, 7.9 millions, it's nearly accounting to 29% of all the risks that are related to these non-communicable diseases were majorly due to the dietary patterns, right? It has been increased from 5.4 million from 1989 to 7.9 million in 2019. So this is what actually we need to look in. That means the doctors, or maybe the health policy makers, or the researchers, or the healthcare professionals. That means there should be a comprehensive approaches, that so that we can make a proper dietary guidelines to overcome these overcome these burden of the non-communicable disease, dietary risk. So this is actually similar to that the previous one. This is from the World Health Organization, which shows the top 10 leading causes for the death globally, which includes the non-communicable, communicable, injuries. In that, we can just see the top one are the ischemic heart disease and the stroke, which is the major leading causes of death globally. So actually which come under the cardiovascular disease, where the cardiovascular disease is the global epidemic with the 80% of the burden in the low income, middle income, as well the high income countries. So what actually the risk factors for these development? So that is the dyslipidemia. So dyslipidemia is what the abnormal lipid levels in the blood, so that it leads to an heart attack, the strokes, or the coronary heart artery disease. So but the cardiovascular disease and associated mortality, they are strongly related to the elevated blood lipid concentrations, that is the total cholesterol, the low density lipoproteins, cholesterol, the triglycerides, and all. So the triglycerides. So where this is actually the basic slide. I think everyone knows that. I'll just give a quick information. Okay. So where this is actually traditionally we know that the lipids, they have been classified based on the functional lipids, structural lipids, and all. And also it comprises of the lipoproteins, that is LDL, HDL, and the triglyceride is the one that is a type of fat, body fat, which we found. So where the common definition is the cholesterol is a waxy material which is produced by the body and also found in the animal products, where with the lipoproteins, we can mention it as an LDL, that is low density lipoprotein, which it is harmful because it can lead to a buildup of the cholesterol in the arteries to form the flakes, and in turn, finally it leads to the cardiovascular risk. So similarly, the HDL we call it as a good cholesterol, where it helps the body to get rid of these deposition of the cholesterol in the blood. So but the triglyceride is it's most common type of the fat, where the excess energy has been stored from the diet, which is in the form of the triglycerides. So where the other one is the ApoB lipoprotein. So where this is a protein actually found in the LDL particles. So this is the key, means it has the ability to cause the atherosclerosis. So it always it's found in all the the causing lipoproteins, and we can take it as a better marker for these CVD, cardiovascular risk, than the LDL levels. So with these high levels of these LDL, triglycerides, and also the low levels of a HDL, they are actually linked to increase the risk of these heart attacks. So majorly, actually, they are related from the lifestyle choices, maybe the poor diet, smoking, alcohol use, or the sedentary lifestyles. That's what they have been classified into a non-modifiable risk factors, modifiable risk factors, and the lifestyles. So this has been the basic categories. Next one, where the most of the organization or the research, they have been taken the account with the account of this modifiable and the non-modifiable risk factors. So these are the two popular evidences we have got. That is there have been done a number of studies which gives the evidence for these, particularly the cardiovascular disease and their risk causing factors. So there's the one is the Framingham Heart Study is there, and the other one is 7-country study. So the Framingham study, the heart study, it has a legacy of 35 years. Majorly, they have focused from the beginning. They have focused the fat and their risk causing to the cardiovascular risk. Now it's running the third generation actually, with the third generation, that too particularly the population which they have beginned. So which finally they are stating that the coronary heart disease that appears to result from a combination of this contributing factors, means that then no single factors they are capable of producing of the disease, but it's a combination of the risk causing factors. So similarly, the 7 country study is there. So it actually it's been started with a person researcher, that's the Ankle Keys. So he has a specific findings. Their research team has also done a specific findings relating to the coronary risk factors and the death rates. So a few findings they have shown. The previous one. The few findings that have shown the positive association between the average percentage of the dietary energy from the saturated fat actually, and that has the positive impact on the death rates, where the negative association they have shown the dietary energy percentage from the MUFA, PUFA, and with death rates. So the Ankle Case was the first to associate that to the traditional Mediterranean diet, where the diets has come up. The Mediterranean diet, which actually characterized by the olive oil as a main source of the fat in that diet, and also the high consumption of cereals, legumes, the vegetables, and also intake of the egg in moderation. So later on, what happened, the Walter Willett from the Harvard University, that he has refined the definition of this Mediterranean diet and its beneficial effect on the cardio vascular diseases. So with these basics, we have come up with number of diets, that is the diets with a dash diet, the Nordic diet, portfolio diet, and vegetarian and a vegan, where the dash diet is a dietary approaches to stop hypertension. Mainly it is developed to lower the blood pressure. And the diet is low, mainly this diet is low in a saturated fat, the salt, dietary cholesterol. And if come to the Nordic diet, it has been addressing the health concern, which is such as the obesity. They're taking where they take the locally available foods, and also they concern about the environment. That is the planetary health diets. So it's especially this diet is rich in the dietary fiber, low in the sugar and salt. That's the sodium. We're coming to the portfolio diet. This is actually about taking the predominantly the plant-based food. Maybe the vegan type of diet also includes, where it also mainly this is known to lower the total and the LDL cholesterol, which is the cholesterol. They have the cholesterol lowering foods, maybe the soya, chickpeas, lentils, and all. Along with in the portfolio diet, we have got the exercise as well as the medication. With along with these, we can just lower the cholesterol levels in our blood. And the last is the vegetarian or the vegan diet. So where the vegetarian, which includes the lacto-vegetarian, where it takes the only the dairy products, where the ovo-vegetarian, the ovo-vegetarian is what they consume the egg, the pesco-vegetarian or the fish or the seafoods, where the vegan diet is what is completely devoid of all the animal foods. So with this, consequently, what actually is nowadays the every association they have been starting to adopt these foods. This in common, actually, these all diets they're focused on the plant-based foods, right? They're shifting towards predominantly the plant-based one. So the recommendation aim is just to reduce the intake of the animal foods for both the health as well as the environment reasons. So this is what these evidences, the previous one. Yes. So these all diets have their own convincing evidence support is there. So the intake of these specific food compounds, the food groups, or the whole dietary patterns to positively influence these dyslipidemia and also to lower the cardiovascular disease. So which where in this diets, the macro and the micronutrient of this predominantly plant-based dietary patterns, they are come from the vegetable fat, the whole foods, the dietary fibers, the phytonutrients which are present, that is the phytosterols in the plant foods. So they are actually helping us to reduce the risk of these cardiovascular disease. So if we come to the predominantly the plant-based dietary pattern, it emphasizes the higher intake of the fruits, uh, the vegetables, the legumes, whole grain products, nuts, seeds, and the vegetable oils. And in the limited intake of the food, it is from the animal origin, such as the low or a non-fat dairy products, the lean meat, and the fish. So the plant-based dietary pattern, it actually vary from flexitarian to the pesco-vegetarians or the lacto-vegetarians, the vegetarians to vegans. Okay, and generally the whole plant-based foods, it represents the most of, it includes most of all the foods, and that if it comes to the animal products, it should be in moderate, or it has its limits. So with these things, we have come up with a article which has published in the year 2023 by Coach and his co-workers, that is the vegetarian or the vegan diets and blood lipids, a meta-analysis of randomized trials, and it is published in the journal Nutrients. So actually the study has got great confirmatory evidences from the large meta-analysis of 30 randomized trials. Okay, it's actually mainly reported that the vegetarian vegan diets that has consistently lead to lower the levels of blood total cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, and the ApoB lipoproteins. And in general, some key findings was that reducing this LDL cholesterol has a huge impact on the cardiovascular disease, the risk. So that's each 1 millimole per liter, that is around 38.7 milligrams per deciliter reduction in the LDL is associated with the average 22% reduction in the major cardiovascular risk, and also the 10% reduction in all the cause mortality over the 5 years of the period. So so in detail we can just go that my colleagues will be leading the further slides where they go with the methodology, how they have taken the participants, what all this, and their results and findings. And I think the plant-based, the more detail, I think Dr. Sindhura will be discussing in the discussion part. We can go through that. Dr. Nitesh, you can
Yeah,
continue. Thank you. Thank
thank
you,
you, ma'am.
everyone. Yeah, thank you.
Good evening, all. I am Dr. Nitesh Fasale, primary healthcare provider from Akola, Maharashtra. I have completed my MBBS from Government Medical College, Akola, and I am also qualified as a diplomat of International Board of Lifestyle Medicine. So today I am going to present methodology section of this particular study. So basically, the methodology is it is a science of how scientifically given study is performed. Coming to methodology section, it is divided into following headings, that is search strategy, definition, eligibility criteria, study selection, data extraction, data synthesis and statistical analysis, and finally risk of bias assessment. Search strategies. The articles for this particular study were searched from 1980 to October 2022 using PubMed and Embase databases, and additionally, they perform cross-referencing using prior original articles and systematic reviews. To search articles, they used MES terms, that is medical subject heading terms. Now coming to definitions. For this particular study, they defined few terms. For instance, the plant-based diets was implied for diet with low or no animal products, and which included vegans and vegetarians. The term vegetarian was used for lacto-vegetarians, ovo-vegetarians, and lacto-vegetarians. The term omnivorous was used for population who used to consume all food groups. Now coming to eligibility criteria, the authors used PCOS model as an eligibility criteria. Study was considered eligible if the population was human, aged more or less than more or equal to 18 years, and not pregnant. If the intervention was vegan or vegetarian, if the comparison was omnivorous control groups, and outcome parameters, if the outcome parameters were blood, serum, or plasma levels of total cholesterol, low density lipoprotein cholesterol, triglycerides, and or apolipoprotein B. And finally, study design included only randomized control trials. Now coming to study selection, after going through databases and cross referencing, the total 497 studies were retried. Out after the removal of duplicates, studies were screened by title and abstract by two authors independently. And when there was conflict in eligibility assessment between two authors, all authors were involved in the inclusion or exclusion of particular study in question. Those studies which only those studies which fulfilled eligibility criteria and published only in English were selected for full text review. And in full text review, again on the basis of eligibility criteria, uh, or the studies with ongoing trials, or studies with wrong indication, or studies with missing baseline values were excluded. And finally, total 30 studies were selected for qualitative synthesis, meta-analysis, and data extraction. Now, coming to data extraction, the data extracted from studies included author, publication year, country, sample size, study design, duration of trial, population characteristics, diet pattern, and intervention programs. Furthermore, they extracted data regarding means and standard deviations of baseline and endpoint levels of lipid and lipoproteins for data synthesis and statistical analysis. Coming to statistical analysis, data synthesis and statistical analysis, studies where values of lipid and lipoproteins were given in the form of standard error of mean, or 95% confidence interval, or medians, and 25 to 75th percentile. Those were converted to means and standard deviations. The overall percentage change in lipid and lipoprotein levels was calculated from weighted average change for interventional group minus weighted average change for control group. The extracted data for convenience converted to international units. They used random effect model uh, to assess the within and between studies variability, whereas I-square statistics was used to assess heterogeneity between studies. The lipid and lipoprotein level differences were shown as means with 95% confidence interval. Here, the statistical significance was a two-sided p less than 0.05. The subgroup analysis were performed for stratified outcomes of total cholesterol, triglycerides, and low density lipoprotein uh, cholesterol. Additionally, uh, additionally for the low density lipoprotein cholesterol, they performed a subgroup analysis based on baseline LDL cholesterol concentrations. The subgroups were classified on the basis of mean age at baseline, mean BMI at baseline, duration of trial, health status, intervention diet, the intervention program, inclusion of subject treated with lipid lowering therapy, outcome analysis, year of publication, sample size, study design, and continent. Now coming to sensitivity analysis, they conducted sensitivity analysis in the form of leave one out meta-analysis to determine whether the estimated effect on lipid and lipoprotein levels varied considerably when each study was excluded from the meta-analysis. And to check publication biases, they performed and they used Funnel plots and tested them for plot asymmetry. The trim and fill method was used to adjust for plot asymmetry. Now, finally, coming to risks of bias assessment, To assess the risk of bias assessment for each individual randomized control trial, they use Cochrane's risk of bias version 2 tool. This tool was consist of 5 domains with signaling questions. So the final judgment of risk of bias in each domain and in overall study was assessed by 2 authors independently and further discussed when conflict between assessment occurred. So that is all about methodology. Now I request Deshna ma'am to continue with results.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello. Yes. So I am the Ms. Deshna Oswal. I am doing my PhD in public health nutrition field. So going on with the results. Next slide, please. Out of the total 497 studies which were searched using the search databases and additional resources, 369 were screened by title and abstract, and 91 went to full text review. After complete review, only 30 studies were included for in the both the qualitative and quantitative synthesis. That is, for this particular meta-analysis, only 30 studies were used. The studies, the description, the characteristics of the study is depicted in this table, wherein we can see the year of publication. The year of publication, all the studies were published from 1982 to 2022. Majority of the studies were conducted in USA, that is about 18 studies of 30 were conducted in USA. Along with that, other countries like Sweden, Finland, South Korea conducted studies to know the impact of plant-based diet. Intervention period of all these studies been from uh, 10 days to 5 years with mean of 29 weeks. 20 design, out of the 30 studies, 9 studies were uh, crossover study, while 21 were parallel study design. A parallel study design is a design wherein participants follow only one dietary regime, while in crossover design, the participants start with either control or intervention, and then they are crossed over to consume other after a washout period. The sample size ranged from 11 to 291 participants, with mean being 279 participants. This slide, same slide. The BMI, the BMI of all the individual, these are the characteristics of the study participant included in this study. The BMI ranged from like most of the studies included individuals with who are obese or overweight or with any health condition, while only 5 studies included participants, healthy participants with less than 30 kg per meter square of BMI. 13 studies reported participants treated with lipid lowering treatment at baseline. So the column here shows the last fourth column shows the lipid lowering therapy. Only 13 studies included lipid lowering therapy. Intervention was either vegetarian or vegan. 7 studies and intervention, especially it was dietary in only 7 studies, while other studies used multi-interventional program with dietary changes as one form of intervention. Risk of bias was higher in all the studies, in specifically in randomization process and deviation from the intended intervention. And all of these studies, in all these studies, the participants were not blinded. They actually knew what what they were getting. Okay, next slide. So now we are looking at a forest. Here we are looking at forest plot. Forest plot. What is a forest plot? Forest plot depicts. It gives a useful graphical display of findings from meta-analysis. It provides essential information. It provides essential information to inform our interpretation of results. And usually it includes, in this particular graph or table, we can see the studies are, the first column includes all the studies. The second is a graphical representation of outcome effect measured in graphical form. Third is the numeric form. And finally, fourth is the weight of the study. Each line represents a study. The midpoint of is the box, which symbolizes the point estimate of the effect. That is the true effect in the population. And it's the size of the box is proportionate to weight of the study. Weight of the study increases as the number of participants included in the study increases. Studies with higher sample size will have greater weight as compared to other studies. Width of the study lines extending through the boxes show their confidence interval. So what was the range of the effect seen? Now, finally, at the bottom, you can see a diamond, which represents the overall pooled effect from the studies. The width of the diamond shows the confidence interval for overall effect. So, in this particular table, we can see the studies in our forest plot, and we have just learned about the forest plot. The midline, which is at 0, that represents if any study passes through this line, that means there is no significant effect of that particular intervention. Here, finally, we can see that there was a mean reduction after doing the forest plus, after doing the meta-analysis, we could see that there was a mean reduction of 7% from baseline in total cholesterol levels from 29 randomized control trials. Next slide, please. This figure represents the meta-analysis of pooled mean effect size of vegetarian and vegan diet on LDL cholesterol. It is based on 27 randomized control trial. And again, it is seen that there is a 10% reduction from baseline in LDL levels. The last effect size diamond shape shows that there's a difference. Now, third, here we can see that this is of LDL cholesterol. Again, the vegetarian and vegan diet has shown that there is a reduction in LDL cholesterol, and the reduction is about 10% after starting the new dietary regime. Next. This particular diagram is for triglycerides. Here we can see most of the studies are on the center, like midline, which is the no significant effect line. This vertical line depicts there is not a significant difference. And yes, we can see that there was no significant difference in triglyceride level after the intervention. Next slide. This is apolipoproteins, and only 6 studies included apolipoprotein, and they looked at apolipoprotein of individuals, and it was seen that there was a reduction, a significant reduction in ApoB levels of about minus 12.92 mg per dl, and thereby a reduction of 14% from baseline. So yes, we can say that there was a great decrease in most of the lipoprotein levels. Next slide, please. Finally, this particular table shows us all the baseline blood lipid and lipoprotein levels of outcomes and study design. So study design, as I had told you about being being parallel or crossover. Here we can see there are different study design. At baseline, the total cholesterol level, the LDL C level, and baseline triglyceride level, and ApoB levels. After the effect, we are now looking at the effect on total cholesterol, LDL-C, triglycerides, and ApoB level. We can see majority of the outcomes have shown a significant difference in the in majority of the studies except triglyceride. Finally, in 4 studies depicted that there was a change in the lipid lowering level, lipid lowering drugs used. Initially, 13 studies used lipid lowering drugs. After the intervention, it was seen that 4 studies had reduced in the lipid lowering level drugs. So, and basically, when we look at the heterogeneity of the data was heterogeneous, and which is based on I-square. When we look at I-square, it is greater than 60%, and it means that it has the studies included are heterogeneous. Sensitivity analysis, as in method section we have already looked. In sensitivity analysis, the leave one out sensitivity analysis is done, like as in one study is excluded, and then the results are again the meta-analysis is done. After removing each study, it was again seen that there was a decrease in the level of total cholesterol, LDL, and ApoB levels. Publication bias. the studies which had smaller sample size had higher chances of publication bias. That's it. Thank you so much. These are the results. Now we are looking at discussion. Dr. Sindhura ma'am will continue with the discussion section. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Deshna. So good evening, everyone. Firstly, I would like to thank each and everyone who had taken your time out in this session. So now I'll be taking over the discussion in the conclusion part. So as my colleague Dr. Preetham has already given a very detailed explanation or the connection of, just a second, please, I need to. So my colleague Dr. Preetham has already given a very a beautiful connection between the NCD burden and the CVD burden, and the connection of the dyslipidemia and the connection of the plant, the dietary patterns. So it's like everything is like connected thing. So I'll not be talking much about that, but just a few points I would like to just stress upon is that dyslipidemia is a primary risk factor for the cardiovascular disease. And why are we actually discussing this? Because the NCD burden is very much high currently, and among the NCDs, if we take the CVD, cardiovascular diseases, they contribute to around 17.9 million deaths annually. That is almost 44% of the entire CVD deaths. So you can understand the depth of the the current situation that is happening. And for this particular cardiovascular diseases, the one of the major risk factor we can say is definitely dyslipidemia. And for the dyslipidemia, again, the major contributing factor can be diet. So if we can see here, the poor dietary consumption, like increase in processed meat and decrease in fruits and vegetables, decrease in whole grains, increase in trans fat and decrease in fiber and salt, can definitely lead to adiposity, and that can ultimately lead to rise in blood lipid levels or the dyslipidemia, which can ultimately lead to atherosclerosis and finally leading to the cardiovascular disease, specifically atherosclerotic cardiovascular diseases. So and this is the reason why we need to be looking out for the more sustainable options. And this study really gives us a lead or the direction to what best can we do in terms of the dietary practices to combat the dyslipidemia and ultimately to combat the cardiovascular diseases. So when it comes to the aim of the disease, the aim of this particular study was to estimate the effect of vegetarian and vegan diets on total cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, triglycerides, and ApoB levels. From the results, we can infer that the plant-based diets, when compared with the omnivorous diets, was associated with the reduction of the cholesterol levels. It led to almost 7% reduction in the total cholesterol levels, 10% reduction in the LDL cholesterol levels, and 14% reduction in the ApoB levels. So plant-based diets have the potential to reduce the atherosclerotic burden and thereby the risk of CVD. So previous studies conducted on the same topic showed similar results with respect to total cholesterol and ADLC, but ApoB was never considered in the previous studies. So that makes the study even more special and more important because ApoB was considered in this particular study. Okay. Just a second. I think I need to mute someone. Right. Now, the importance of the study findings is emphasized by the United Nations Sustainable Development Agenda, stating that by 2030, premature mortality caused by NCDs should be brought down by 1/3. And as we have already stressed upon that CVDs are the biggest risk drivers among the non-communicable diseases, and ApoB containing lipoproteins are the substantial risk factors for the ASCVD, specifically atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. Numerous studies have shown that alterations in absolute LDL concentrations are proportional to the ASCVD risk. So it's high time that we need to be finding the specific or the sustainable dietary patterns for a proper solution for this dyslipidemia, as well as to reduce the cardiovascular burden. Now, before I move on to the actual discussion part, I just want to give some important statistics from the Indian population, because that will make us to understand the depth of the situation that we are right now. So in accordance with the WHO, India accounts for 1/5 of these deaths worldwide, especially in younger population. And the results of global burden of disease study, it stated that the age standardized CVD death rate of India is around 272 per 1 lakh population, which is much higher higher than that of the global average of 235. And in the same study, they have also mentioned that CVDs are striking Indians a decade earlier than the Western population. And within India, the rates of CVD vary markedly, with the highest in states like Kerala, Punjab, and Tamil Nadu. So this is where you can see, this was published in the Lancet. You can see the highest number of CVD burden on the CVD cases are being found in Punjab, Tamil Nadu, and Kerala. And this is the 8th standardized CVD death rate that has been presented in graphically. So, an ICMR study in 2014 brought out that more than 3/4 of general population had abnormalities in at least one of the lipid parameters, and average Indian diets contain more amounts of carbohydrates, specifically refined carbs, high-fat dairy, butter, ghee, cheese in their everyday meals, and reusing of oil for cooking is the most common practice that happens in a lot of Indian households, which this particular reusing or reheating, multiple times using of oil, it will increase the atherogenic properties in the oil, which will, because it increases the trans fats, it increases the atherogenic properties, which again increase the risk of atherosclerosis and the cardiovascular risk. So reusing of oil or continuous reheating of oil should never be done. That practice should be definitely avoided, not just limited. Next, again, the less consumption of, they also notice that there is less consumption of fruits and vegetables comparatively among the Indian population. So again, just to quote the what are the foods that are actually leading to, if we look out for the dietary patterns or the food groups that are actually contributing to increase in the cholesterol levels, is basically the foods that are rich in high saturated fats. When we look at some of the food groups that are rich in high saturated fats, definitely they are bakery products, full fat dairy products, red meats, processed meats, and fried foods. So this is taken from one particular study where they have done on undergrad students regarding their daily consumption of different foods, and they came to find out that you can see there is increased consumption of refined grains, increased consumption of meat, oil, soft drinks, whereas decreased consumption of legumes, whole grains, and all. So definitely this kind of we need to start a proper healthy eating pattern right from the early years. If we start healthy eating patterns from the early years itself, it is going to reduce our cardiovascular risk by almost 3-fold times. So that's the reason why this particular study is conducted in undergrad students, where we can know like how the adult people are actually into what, whenever they live in the hostels or something like that, what kind of food groups are actually focusing on. So that will give us a little picture about what our youth of India are also getting into, or what type of dietary habits they are getting into. So when we know all these things, what we need to do exactly. So if we reduce the consumption of fats, automatically the absorption of triglycerides and the cholesterol levels can be reduced, subsequently lowering the apoprotein or the lipoprotein particles in the blood as well. So specifically when we talk about PUFA, they have a very important role in reducing the LDL cholesterol by increasing the expression of hepatic LDL cholesterol. So the better flushing out of the bad cholesterol can happen. And when we see the non-HDL HDL particles, like whether it could be LDL, IDL, VLDL, chylomicrons, among all those things, LDL is the most abundant ApoB containing lipoprotein particle. Almost it contributes to 90% of it. So automatically when we try to reduce this LDLC, the ApoB levels can also be reduced. Or when we try to focus on reduction in the ApoB, we can also reduce the LDL cholesterol levels. So less impact. Again, from this study, what they have noticed is that when we compare the normal individuals and the obese individuals, when we try these dietary changes on the LDL cholesterol levels, the result or the effect was comparatively lower in the obese people, because we can consider obese people like a synthesizers rather than the absorbers. So the effect was comparatively less. It doesn't mean that the effect is completely nullified. There is effect, but compared to the normal healthy subjects, it is quite less. And also when they have studied the effect of the dietary changes on people who are already on the lipid lowering therapy like statins, again there also, because obviously the medication is going to dominate, so the diet is not contributing much, but definitely it will add on, but not dominating the medication effect. So However, study illustrates that following a plant-based diet will definitely, it is going to improve the lipid profile. So if you look at some of the practices or the nutrition interventions which can help in reducing our LDL cholesterol levels, is that this has been published in the Journal of Clinical Lipidology. So if we replace our 5% of the calories what we are getting from the saturated fats, if we replace that with unsaturated fats, whether it be PUFA or MUFA, we can reduce our LDL cholesterols by almost 5 to 10%. If we try to include 7.5 grams per day of viscous fiber or soluble fiber, we can reduce LDL cholesterol by almost 6 to 9%. And if we include 2 grams per day of plant sterols or phytosterols or plant stenols, it can help to reduce LDL cholesterol by almost 5 to 8%. And if we include 30 grams per day of plant protein, instead of going for the animal-based proteins, if we shift to plant-based protein, it is going to definitely help in reducing the LDL cholesterol by 3 to 5%. And if we lose at least 5% of our body weight, that means if somebody is 90 kgs, if someone loses 4.5 kgs, so that itself will lead to at least 3 to 5% reduction in the LDL cholesterol. So by following all these nutrition interventions, the final estimated total reduction in the LDL cholesterol can come around 22 to 37% just with these nutrition interventions. So just to summarize all of these, what are the interventions that we need to be following to lower the cholesterol levels is definitely reduce the saturated fat intake, avoid trans fats, limit the dietary cholesterol, increase the unsaturated fats, like PUFA, polyunsaturated fatty acids, or MUFA, monounsaturated fatty acids, and we need to focus on the reduction in body weight. At least 5 to 10% should be the target, but at least we can start with initial 5%, and we can definitely lose more than that if somebody is overweight or obese. And we need to increase the protein, focus on increasing the protein, but specifically we need to be focusing on the plant-based protein rather than including animal-based protein. And also inclusion of viscous fiber or soluble fiber like chia seeds, it could be oats, barley. So these foods are rich in soluble fiber, which we can definitely focus on including them. And again, increasing the plant sterols. If we take like legumes, whole grains, fruits, vegetables, all these are rich in phytosterols or plant stenols or sterols that can also be included to help in lowering the LDL cholesterol levels. So from the AHA, American Heart Association Presidential Advisory, what we came to know that is, in that particular study, what they published is, if we replace at least 5% or the isocaloric, for example, if I have reduced 5% of my saturated fat or the calories contributing from saturated fat, and if I replace those 5% with PUFA, it is going to reduce my cardiovascular risk by almost 25%. If I replace saturated fat isocalorically with MUFA, it is going to reduce my cardiovascular risk by 15%. And if I replace my saturated fat calories with whole grains, it is going to reduce my cardiovascular risk by 9%. But instead, if I added, if I replace saturated fat with refined carbs or trans fat, it is not going to reduce my risk, but instead it is going to increase my risk by 1% and 5% respectively. And one more details that we have taken from the same AHA presidential advisory is that effects of dietary fat and carbohydrates on blood LDL cholesterol, triglycerides, and HDL. If we replace the saturated fats with PUFA, it is going to reduce LDL cholesterol by approximately 2.6%. And again, if I replace with MUFA, it is going to reduce by almost 1.6. And if I replace with carb, specifically complex carbs, not the refined carbs, then it is going to reduce by approximately 1.3. The similar things with triglycerides and as well as HDL cholesterol. So you might be thinking HDL cholesterol is reduced by plant-based diet, but it is not that detrimental because we are reducing LDL as well as triglycerides. So even a little decrease in the HDL cholesterol is not that detrimental towards compared to the increase in the LDL cholesterol. So our primary focus should be on focusing in reduction of the LDL cholesterol rather than increasing the HDL cholesterol. because LDL cholesterol is the one which is more atherosclerotic, and it causes the atherosclerotic vascular disease. So again, this is from one of the study we have taken, just to give you an outline or the understanding of what foods can help, or a better presentation of how different foods can reduce the LDL cholesterol levels, to what extent. For example, if you can see here, like the ones with the dark big green circles, like soy, it could be flaxseed, soluble fiber, unsaturated oils, plant sterols, all these can reduce our cholesterol levels, specifically LDL cholesterol levels, by a moderate percentage. Whereas if you can see these upper portions, they does not decrease, but they actually increase the cholesterol levels. So from all the above discussed parameters, it is very important for us to definitely look out for the sustainable diet, and for that, if we consider the nutritional compositions of the diets, like plant-based diets like vegan, vegetarian, and if we compare that with the meat-based diet, so this nutrient comparison we have done actually in our first journal club. So if we look at specifically for the cardiovascular health, for an optimal cardiovascular health, what we discussed till now is that we need to be consuming less amount of saturated fat, less amount of total fat, less amount of dietary cholesterol, and increased amount of dietary fiber and PUFA. And looking at these characteristics or the criteria, I think plant-based diet definitely hits the jackpot, because plant-based diets, whether it could be vegan or vegetarians, it is definitely low in saturated fats, low in total fat, low in dietary cholesterol. It is very rich in dietary fiber and very much rich in POFA, whereas all these characters are quite reverse in the animal-based diet. So hence, this can also be taken that a plant-based diet is very, plant-based diet is much more beneficial in terms of optimal cardiovascular health compared to the animal-based diet. So if we see how the effects and potential benefits of plant-based dietary patterns on atherogenic lipoproteins and ASCVD is, this is a study we have taken from a study which has been published in European Society of Cardiology. So specifically, consuming not just any plant-based diet. For example, if you take a just simple Mac Aloo Tikki burger from the McDonald's, and if you take an oatmeal with very much good amount of fruit bowl. So even that Mac Aloo Tikki burger is also a plant-based diet, right? So, but that is not it's more like a calorie dense but nutrient sparse. If you take a bowl of oatmeal with fruits, that is where it is nutrient dense and good quality plant-based diet. So such kind of plant-based diet is what we should be focusing, that is nutritionally balanced plant-based diets. So if we follow, or if we include high quality plant-based diets, or nutritionally balanced plant-based diets, that means they are rich in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, seeds, legumes, and non-tropical oils, and limited added sugars and salt. They are actually, that such kind of plant-based diets are low in cholesterol-raising dietary components like sat fats and dietary cholesterol, and they also contain cholesterol-lowering dietary components like unsaturated fatty acids, viscous fibers, and plant sterols or phytosterols. So ultimately, such kind of a high quality plant-based diets will reduce our LDL cholesterol levels, will reduce our ApoB levels, as a result, giving us a potential long-term benefit of reduction in the atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease risk. So similar studies on effects of plant-based diets found a notable reduction in total cholesterol levels, LDL, ApoB, low-grade inflammation, and C-reactive protein concentration. Some studies, what we have taken here is one is from the EPIC study, which has been published in the Oxford Journal, where they have compared the meat eaters, fish eaters, vegetarians, and vegans. You can see the total cholesterol levels are definitely low in the people who consume a pure plant-based diet. And there is one more study where they compared high amount of animal-based consumption and low amount of animal-based consumption, animal product consumption. So they found that definitely in people, in people who consume less amount of animal products or the meat products, their cholesterol levels is comparatively better when you compare to the persons who consume higher amount of meat and meat products. So, and this is also one more study which has been taken from American Journal of Cardiology, which shows the effects of plant-based diets on cholesterol in subjects with hyperlipidemia. So you can definitely see it led to the plant-based diets led to the reduction in the total cholesterol levels and the LDL cholesterol levels as well. So currently, why are we discussing about the dietary patterns again? Because we need to reduce the cardiovascular burden at a very high level. We should be focusing at the root level. That is, we need to be focusing on the primordial prevention itself. That is the reason why we need to be focusing on the right kind of a dietary patterns, which are going to help us in reduction of the cholesterol levels, which is going to control the dyslipidemia, and also finally we can reduce the cardiovascular disease burden. So according to the American College of Cardiology guidelines, in their dietary assessment, what they have mentioned is that when the vegetables, fruits, legumes, nuts, whole grains, and fish consumption is increased, and when the processed meats, refined carbs, and sweetened beverages are decreased, and when you increase MUFA, PUFA, and complex carbs and reduce sat fats, trans fats, cholesterol, sodium, and simple sugars, definitely it has led to the decrease or the reduction in the risk of ASCVD. And this was published in the Journal of Clinical Lipidology, where they say the healthy dietary patterns like healthy vegetarian or vegan, Mediterranean dash diets or healthy US style, or including foods like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, healthy protein sources like nuts, seeds, fish, low-fat or fat-free dairy products, or lean cuts of meat if at all it's necessary, and non-tropical plant oils. When you include these kind of dietary patterns, it is going to reduce your ASCVD risk. Whereas if you include foods rich in animal fats, saturated fats, trans fats, tropical oils, processed meats, refined grains, added sugars, highly processed foods, alcohol, and foods with high sodium content, it is definitely going to increase the ASCVD risk. Okay, so there is some problem with the image. So there is one more study that we have taken from the American College of Cardiology. It's a meta-analysis which included almost 2 lakh participants who are eating vegetarian diets, showed that adherence to a more healthful vegetarian diet definitely reduce the risk of developing coronary heart disease, whereas adherence to an unhealthy vegetarian diet, that means inclusion of refined carbs, added sugars, etc., was correlated with increased risk of developing coronary heart disease. So just not consuming plant-based diet is important, but healthy and nutritionally balanced plant-based diet inclusion is very much important, and that has to be emphasized. So this is another study which has been published in MDPI. It is estimated that the adoption of a healthy lifestyle choices reduces the risk of myocardial infarction by 81 to 94%, and nutrition is the most important behavioral factor in preventing the premature cardiovascular deaths. And one more study which has been published in BMJ Heart Journal, multiple studies have shown fruits and vegetables inclusion to be consistently associated with reduced coronary heart disease and CVD mortality and hypertension. Here they say that if we include at least if someone is having 0 portions of fruits and vegetables, if they try to include at least 1 portion of vegetables per day, 1 serving of vegetables per day, it is going to reduce their relative risk of coronary heart disease by approximately 4%. And not only that, the fruits and vegetables, they are very much rich in flavonoids, phytosterols, phytonutrients, vitamins, minerals, which definitely play a cardioprotective role compared to the animal-based diet. So now, if we compare a consumption of a plant-based diet versus non-vegetarian diet, we can definitely say that plant-based diet helps in reduction of the total cholesterol level, LDL, FOB, lipoprotein, C-reactive protein, leading to decreased risk of atherosclerosis, and finally leading to decreased risk of the cardiovascular disease burden. But the problem, we can face certain barriers also. What are those barriers? When we say about plant-based diet or home cooking or something, the usual barriers that we might come across is that there is very little time to prepare healthy meals, or healthy meals are not that tasty or interesting, or healthy meals are not readily available. They're not convenient to prepare healthy meals, or inadequate funds. And some more barriers that we can come across is that probably the absolute cost of it, the availability, the accessibility, and the social support from the family members. If at least in the family, if one wants to follow follow a plant-based diet. May not be other family members doesn't want to follow, so that support might be lacking, or the nutrition counseling from the trained healthcare providers, or food and nutrition literacy, or the skills and preparation of the plant-based food preparations or cooking. But when it comes to the other choices like processed foods or animal-based foods, when we look into it, definitely hyperpalatability is one attracting factor there of the unhealthy foods, and there are much more convenience of the unhealthy foods availability, like they're non-perishable, ready to consume foods will be there. Again, enjoyment of eating meat and preference for familiarity, believe that meat is necessary for a healthy diet, and such kind of misinformations can be there. So how can we overcome these kind of barriers to increase the adherence of the healthy diets or the plant-based diets, is by educating the nutritional adequacy on a well-planned plant-based diet, that is nutritionally balanced plant-based diet, and to build confidence in, while someone is wanting to transition from the animal-based diet into plant-based diet, and we need to provide them the realistic and practical dietary guidances, and we need to connect individuals with the local food systems like community gardens, local farmer markets, and improve the availability of healthful plant foods in convenient settings, and improve access to dietitians, and integrate a plant-based menu into school feeding programs, and develop new plant-based products that are healthy for all, or the new recipes that everyone can access. And most importantly, right now, which the PAN is also doing, is that integrating the plant-based nutrition and culinary medicine into the medical training, which is the need of the hour right now, and to train the medical professionals in effective patient-centered communication when discussing way to prevent resistance to seeking healthcare and dietary guidance, and also the partnerships between government organizations and the organizations which can spread evidence-based messaging on plant-based diets, and the taxations needs to be reduced, subsidies needs to be produced, should be given, and regulations on food advertisements and marketing which promote red meat and the processed meat. Okay. By including such kind of potential actions, we can definitely overcome the barriers facilitated across the different socio-ecological sectors. As a result, we can facilitate a smooth transition and maintenance of a nutritionally balanced plant-based diet. So, just moving on to the conclusion, I would like to just summarize whatever the points I have discussed. So the plant-based diets definitely reduce the plant cholesterol levels. So several mechanisms. One is, obviously we know the plant-based diets are low in total fat. It could be saturated fat, dietary cholesterol, which are the most needed criteria for the reduction in the cholesterol levels and the control of the dyslipidemia. And the plant-based diets are very much predominant in dietary fiber. This viscous fiber or the soluble fiber is going to increase the cholesterol removal, and the plant sterols are also going to decrease the cholesterol absorption by competing with the actual cholesterol molecules, which can be eliminated like a waste product. And the dietary fiber, phytosterols, carotenoids, flavonoids, etc. of plant-based diet, they affect cholesterol levels through multiple mechanisms. And when we isocalorically replace the saturated fat with PUFA, we can reduce the LDL by almost 10.5, and MUFA, if we replace it with MUFA, we can reduce the LDL by 8 milligrams. And an increase in 100 milligrams per day of dietary cholesterol, because our daily intake of the dietary cholesterol should be less than 300 milligrams per day only, not more than that. And if we increase it beyond that by 100 milligrams, it is going to increase our LDL cholesterol by almost 1.5 to 2 milligram per deciliter. And from a study published in AHA, what they mentioned is that 1 millimole per liter lower concentration or the lower levels of the LCD cholesterol can reduce our cardiovascular risk by almost 30% and 10% reduction in all-cause mortality over a 5-year period. So coming to the dietary recommendations to reduce the cholesterol levels, just to summarize, we need to be taking less amount of saturated fats, increase PUFA, MUFA, include whole grains, fruits, vegetables, legumes, nuts, seeds, increase plant-based proteins, include fiber-rich foods, and avoid foods that are rich in saturated fats, processed foods, processed meat, alcohol. So all such kind of foods should be avoided. So a diet and lifestyle approach can reduce blood lipid levels by around 30 to 40% and 30% reduction in CVD risk and around 30% reduction in CVD risk. So among that, we came across a study where it mentioned that a whole food plant-based diet is much more likely to get the cholesterol levels into that convenient range that will not progress or allow the atherosclerosis to worsen or progress further. So consumption of so to conclude it, consumption of vegetarian and vegan diets reduces blood levels of atherogenic lipoproteins. But most importantly, it has to be a nutritionally balanced plant-based diet. That is the key for the better results. And shifting to a plant-based diet at a population level will also reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, considerably making these diets more sustainable, at the same time reducing growing burden of atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. So if someone has transitioned from an animal-based diet to a vegan diet or a plant-based diet, the greenhouse gas emissions can be reduced by almost 49%. And just to conclude it finally, I think this beautiful picture puts the essence of the entire plant-based diet in a very beautiful way, that by following a well-balanced, nutritious plant-based diet, we can reduce our cholesterol levels, bad cholesterol levels, we can reduce the risk of CVD, we can reduce the risk of blood pressure, we can reduce the risk of diabetes, we can reduce the risk of obesity. And not only that, we can also reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, we can reduce the fresh water usage, water pollution can be decreased, and the land usage can also be decreased. So the plant-based diets are not only heart healthy, but also planet healthy. Thank you, everyone. Dr. Suleiman, would you like to do the vote of thanks, please?
Can we have the discussion now?
Right, sure.
If any doubts are there from the participants?
Hello. Hello.
Yes, Ramesh.
Madam, what is a pescatarian diet?
Okay, so pescatarian diet is a diet which it's a kind of a vegetarian diet, but it includes or it allows the inclusion of fish or the seafood into their diet also. So that is a pescatarian diet.
Thank you.
So there is a question in the chat box. I think Advocate Pragati has asked, ma'am, but being a part of this fastest running world, we basically don't have much time to focus on our diet and tends to consume more of fatty foods, kind of packaged foods. And also it has become a matter of higher standardization. Okay, to ultimately increase the cholesterol level. So can we please know how to overcome this? So for this, the simple solution, what I can say is Pragati. I think consuming the easiest, consuming fruits and vegetables, we really don't have to cook or anything, right? So it's just simply we need to buy and, a simple cutting. We need to just simply cut and include more of raw fruits, vegetables, salads into it. That itself will take care of us, or inclusion of good amount of fluids into our diet. Okay, whether it could be infused water, something like that, to keep us well hydrated, or definitely if we can take time at least 30 minutes out of our 24 hours in a day, I think we can prepare a very good meals for the entire day as well. So it's just again it's a journey. Slowly, once we have that determination or dedication that we want to start on a plant-based diet, we can start slowly, but definitely we can see the improvements. Any Indian substitute for oatmeal, ma'am? So for the oatmeal, we can go for instead of the actual oatmeal preparation, we can go for like ragi porridge or ragi malt or millet based things also. We can definitely go for, because millets are also very much rich in dietary fiber, so that can also be included. Any studies looking at consumption of vadas and samosas? Not really, we have not come across that. Yes, any more questions, please? And thanks for a great presentation. Thank you so much, Bijli Nandaji, and thank you for the wonderful session. Thank you so much, Dr. Vijayender. Yes. And we'll definitely be posting this particular presentation later in the YouTube. Everyone can go through it, and we will also be sharing some interesting polls in the WhatsApp group maybe tomorrow. Please stay tuned for that. Yes, Suleiman, now I think you can do the vote of thanks, please.
Participants, esteemed members of the PAN organization, and our presenters, it's a privilege to deliver the vote of thanks on behalf of the PAN organization for this online journal club. First and foremost, I would like to express my deep gratitude to all the participants who joined from various corners of the world. We greatly appreciate your commitment on joining for this advancing knowledge in the field of nutrition. I'd also like to extend a special thanks to the PAN team. Their commitment to promoting evidence-based nutrition is commendable, and we are grateful for the unwavering support. I'd like to express our sincere appreciation to our distinguished presenters, Dr. Preetham ma'am, Dr. Nitesh sir, Deshna ma'am, and Dr. Sindhura ma'am. Your insightful discussions and thought-provoking insights have enriched the understanding of this vital field. Lastly, I would like to take this opportunity to encourage all participants to continue their involvement in future journal club meets, webinars, CMEs, and many such events organized by the PAN organization. Thank you all, and let's meet again in our next journal club.
Thank you so much, Suleiman, and thank you so much, Dr. Preetham. Thank you so much, Deshna. Thank you so much, Dr. Nitish. It's been a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. We'll be meeting in our next journal club. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Good night. Good night.